All right, welcome in everybody to Patriots Postgame Live after a huge, massive, cannot overstate the importance of this one win over the Los Angeles Chargers. The Patriots, it got a little scary there at the end for the Patriots, but they're able to pull it out. They're able to recover the onside kick and defeat the Chargers 27-24 in a pretty crazy game. And even though the Chargers scored there at the end, a lot of positives to take from the defensive side of the ball. The offense was up and down, but I think that's one of the exciting things about this game. Just going through some numbers really quick. Mac Jones' numbers, about 50% completion, 217 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions, only one rushing touchdown. I think the real positive thing out of this game is that a lot of people looked at this one and said that the Patriots were going to need to win a shootout in order to take this game. A lot of people said New England's going to come in against this Chargers team. They're hot. They shut down Justin Herbert last time they played him, but that's not going to happen this time. People lauding the Chargers as one of the best teams in the AFC, if not the best team in the AFC right now, and expecting Justin Herbert to go on this meteoric rise, potentially to MVP level. Like people, I think there were people even in the last week, I remember taking him over Patrick Mahomes. Like that there was all week flooded with that. People gushing over Justin Herbert. And he comes out today against the Patriots and they make him look rather pedestrian. I mean, Justin Herbert, he didn't have a terrible game. He threw the touchdown at the end that makes it look a little better, but 223 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. Adrian Phillips got him twice. The first one, it wasn't totally his fault, and the second one, I suppose, wasn't either because it looked like the receiver might have run the wrong route. First one went off of Austin Eckler's hands and into the hands of Adrian Phillips, who made a great play on the ball. But overall, I mean, Justin Herbert was not the special player that he has been so far this season and that people expect him to be today against the Patriots. And give a lot of credit to Adrian Phillips. If he does not win AFC Defensive Player of the Week, there is something wrong with that voting system. I mean, if there's another person that I am totally blanking on at the moment that should be in contention for that, please let me know in the chat, if there's somebody I missed. But right now, if it's not Adrian Phillips, that is ludicrous. He was amazing. Nick Folk, again, he's already won Special Teams Player of the Week, but he should be in contention for that one too. Nick Folk today, 4 of 4 on field goals, 2 48-yarders. He was money today for the Patriots, so you got to give him praise for what he did. And I think that, again, the Patriots come into this game against Justin Herbert, which kind of got me off track talking about all the talk about him coming to the game. People are like, you're going to need to win a shootout. The Chargers are going to put up 30. You're going to need to put up 32. Your defense is not, good enough to stop the Chargers. Your secondary is not good enough. You hear that all week about the Patriots. And for all intents and purposes, I don't care about the last touchdown the Chargers had. They shut them down. They just did not allow the Chargers to do much on offense. And really, the Chargers wide receivers, I know that, whoever it was, the Chargers number 5 guy there, Josh Palmer, got his, first touchdown of his career, I think, whatever it was. So I credit him. But they're 2 big weapons. Mike Williams, who's had a great season, 2 receptions, 19 yards. Keenan Allen was a little better, 6 for 77 and touchdown in there early on in the game. But really, the way the Patriots defended those guys and the way the Patriots were playing coming into this game, remember what CeeDee Lamb did to them? I think a lot of people would have thought, they're going to get dusted by these 2 Chargers wide receivers. How are they going to cover Mike Williams and Keenan Allen? There's no chance. And they did a pretty good job. Even against Mike Williams, even against Keenan Allen, who had a pretty good day, that's pretty solid. That's better than I was expecting the Patriots to do today against Keenan Allen, So I think that was great. And obviously what they did to Mike Williams was incredible. So you got to give them a lot of credit for that. And, not only that, but the defensive performance as a whole, I know that Austin Eckler, had a pretty good day. He was hobbled. So, maybe you give him credit there. But even still, I mean, they just the way they were able to limit the Chargers offensively, limit their scoring, create those turnovers, that's big. And I know I'm not saying that by any means that, now you have a shutdown secondary. I'm not going to go that far. But if they're able to hold their own, and Matt Judon, obviously another sack today, so he's obviously playing like incredible, near the top of the league in sacks now, 8.5. I know the only person who had more coming into today, or now at 9 after the half sack that he had too. The only person that had more than that coming into the day was Myles Garrett, who I know had another one. So that in and of itself, like Matt Judon, we talked about before the season. I talked about being definitely their best player, even if Stephon Gilmore was on the team or not, who had a big interception today for the Panthers. Matt Judon was their best defensive player, and he's proving that to be true right now, like the kind of difference maker he can be for this team. So is the secondary a shutdown secondary? No. Does it need to be? Maybe not. If you can beat a team like the Chargers, that kind of passing attack, that kind of quarterback, and this is all you needed from your defense, like that's and they kind of led you to the win, like that's huge. Like the Patriots offense today, not very good. I mean, penalties kind of killed it. Damian Harris had a few big runs that were called back because of penalties, but the penalties are part of it. The penalties are part of that offensive performance. Mac Jones wasn't great today, and all of that taken into consideration, they still won. They didn't need that big offensive day to beat the Chargers. And with a rookie quarterback, and I know Mac Jones has been good, and we all think Mac Jones is going to be good and hasn't been good or whatnot. But with a rookie quarterback, you're not always going to be able to put up 54 points every week, right? So being able to win these games where your defense really carries you, not only holding the Chargers to 24 is not like anything great, but again, that garbage time touchdown, just take out of it. Plus the pick six, which essentially, that's the difference maker in the game by Adrian Phillips. So they put 7 of your points on the board. They put 7 of your 27 up there. Your offense really only scored 20, and that was, 2 of those were from the 2-point conversion from the play that. And do you give your offense credit for that? Sure, but 2 of those were from the 2-point conversion after the Adrian Phillips pick six, 4 field goals from Nick Folk, and just the 1 touchdown. Like, the offense was today. It wasn't anything special. So, the fact that the defense was able to carry them is huge for this team going forward. It actually proves this team can win multiple ways. They can blow out the Jets and put up a lot of points on the board, or they can have a great defensive performance like they did today and make a big impact that way. So, a lot of great stuff there. We'll get into some of the comments in the chat right now. I see you guys talking. Justin Wolpert, what's up, Justin? Saying the first real win of the season. And I don't think that's unfair. Again, people were talking all week, like, you've only beat the Jets twice and the Texans, and that's all you've done. And fine, yeah, that's fair. Now they beat the Chargers. So now that shuts those people up that are saying the Patriots can only beat these fake teams. This is their best win in some time. Like, this really is. It's a big one for them, even dating back to last season. So this is huge for them. And the fact that they're, get Mac Jones, to a bit of a, 2-game win streak here, going into that Panthers game, a team that honestly is not playing that well. Their defense is, but their offense has been struggling. Sam Darnold can't figure it out. So that is big. And when you look at again, we've talked about their schedule moving forward here, and it starts to look easier. The Browns losing today too. So those big next 3, which we talked about, like, it gets kind of easier from here. The Chargers were the best team of this bunch. Now you have the Panthers, and you have the Falcons and the Browns in there in whatever order. So those should all be easier games than this one. You should have proven something to yourself today. Get confidence going into those games. And I am at least hoping, like, they can go 3-0 in those games. Jimmy J, you're saying 4-2 next 2 games, next 6 games 2 weeks ago. You said that 2 weeks ago. It's looking pretty good right now. It's looking pretty good for you. I want to see what they can do over the next 3, though. I think that's big for me. The Jets game, Jimmy J, come on, like, no one's going to give you a lot of credit for calling that one a win. I'll give you a little credit here, but I mean, that's not exactly a tough call. So the Chargers one was big. The next 3 are going to be even bigger. If you can, let's just say 2-1. If you just go 2-1, you stay over 500. You're 6-5. Going into those battles with the Bills and the Titans, which you're going to have to go up against, like, that is nice. That's a nice spot to be in. So I mean, it's not perfect. I think 3-0, obviously 3-0 over the next 3 would be better, but even still, an important game for the Patriots moving forward if they plan on making the playoffs, which again is going to be kind of tough here. It's Gear saying, I'll take it. Obviously, Jimmy J saying big win. It's Gear also saying, I thought Hunter Henry was going to have a bigger game And that's fair. It's, again, the revenge game thing. The Chargers have struggled against tight ends this year a little bit, although I will say that they have gone. They are in a division with Travis Kelce and Darren Waller. So, like, having bad games against tight ends, not exactly, an anomaly in that division. It's very difficult when you're going up against those types of guys. So, I think that I understand you wanting Hunter Henry to have that big game, that revenge game factor, but the offense struggle as a whole. And Hunter Henry still, I think he set up that Damian Harris touchdown, or maybe it was the fourth and goal they didn't get. But he had one of those big passes, only the one catch for the 33 yards, but it set them up in a nice position. I'll have to figure out if that was the drive that the Patriots were stalled on the 1 yard line, or if that was the drive that they actually were able to punch it in with Damian Harris. I think it's the one they stalled on. So would you have liked to see him kind of punch it in there? Sure. I think that, even so, still it was a big catch. And, I think it's ultimately, yes. Would you like to see more? Yes. Would you like to see another touchdown and continue that streak, which ultimately came to an end today? Yeah. Would you like to see the revenge game, which, I was playing up before the game and I know other people were talking about? Yes. All yeses, of course. But I think the positive to take out of that is you didn't need it. You didn't need it. You were still able to come away with the win, and that is huge. I don't think that a lot of people would have expected that the Patriots would win. If I told you Mac Jones was going to have a completion percentage around 50% and he wasn't going to throw a single touchdown, I don't think anybody would have assumed that that would have been good enough in a quarterback battle with Justin Herbert. But guess what? It was. So that is really the big kind of the big takeaway from the game for me is, that they really get that done. That Hunter Henry play, from the looks of it, is I'm trying to it was on the fourth down stop that ultimately came on that possession, which ultimately stifled the drive. So yeah, you'd like to see him get in there, but overall, I still think that there's other good things to take away from this performance. But if you want to get upset that Hunter Henry didn't take it to his former team, or really put it on them, then go ahead. I'm not going to stop you. Jen Will saying, I'm new to the channel, only found it from Celtics coverage. You also do Patriots and what other coverages? Right now, it's just Patriots and Celtics mostly, but we'll try to mix other stuff in going forward. It's Gear saying, how do you feel about Wynn for the rest of the year? So I know that he left the game for Haran. I don't know what the latest update on him is. It's Gear. If you want to let me know in the chat if you're able to figure that out for me. But yeah, I think that honestly, Wynn hasn't been like great this season. I know that, Haran hasn't exactly been either, but I think the hope is that right now, hey, you know what? Michael Onwenu is pretty good at tackle. That's where he should stay all season. That's been the consensus. So you really only need one of Trent Brown or Isaiah Wynn to be healthy. You really only need one of those guys. So as long as one of those guys can get back to healthy and playing, then fine. I think that the performance against Houston, where you didn't have any of those guys, the offensive line was pretty good that day. So I don't have like all the faith in the world in their backups there. Certainly, Haran had the big penalty that got the Damian Harris run called back and everything like that. So, maybe that scares you a little bit, the prospect of having him in there. But the offensive line, even when they were decimated, played well that day against Houston. And that gave me faith. Like, even if we're dealing with injuries, I feel like they should be able to piece it together, because they did that day. And, Houston's by no means a great team. I don't think we should feel like spectacular, and we should like point to that Houston game of like evidence of things to, come. Of course, they were getting blown out by the Rams today before they kind of made that comeback in the fourth quarter. But even still, that's the fact that you're able to do that against any sort of NFL team is impressive to me. I just didn't think they were going to be able to do that. I thought you're going up against NFL defenders with these backups, you're going to get blown by. You're going to get your run stuff. Mac Jones is going to get killed back there, and it didn't happen. So as far as the win stuff, I don't see an update. I guess he did return to the game, and so that wasn't a huge injury issue. But if he is, if this is something that lingers, it's just like get Trent Brown back in there as soon as possible. And if Trent Brown does come back, I think the plan is to put him in Isaiah Wynn's spot and either find another spot on the line for Isaiah Wynn or sit him on the bench. I think your two best tackles are undoubtedly Trent Brown and Onwenu when healthy. So, I can't imagine how they wouldn't go with that. Patrick saying, "Bam, we back, baby. Let's go, Pats." I don't know. I don't know if they're totally back. Obviously, this is just one game. They have a lot more business to take care of. But being 500 right now, like that's got to feel good. It's after the way the season was going, you're 2-4. You feel like, oh, is this going to be another lost season? But it feels like you're starting to figure some things out. Last week it felt like the offense was starting to figure some things out. This week it felt like the defense kind of figured some things out. And now, what do you look like next week against the Panthers team that is kind of reeling a little bit? And Patrick, I see you already adding the qualifier. Maybe we're back. I mean, that's fair. I think that I'll give that one to you because I think you're even a little scared and trepidatious yourself there, saying like, there's a big win against a good team, and it's been a while since they beat a good team, so you got to feel good about it. But like, it's about consistency, and that's what it's been about for the last year and a half for the Patriots. So you have to go to Carolina now. You have to go on the road, which is a killer because the Patriots I know there were some tough ones there against the Cowboys and the Buccaneers, but the fact that they started the year 0-4 at home, like that is really unfortunate because now that means you have to go on the road and you have to win these road games. And if you don't, then you're, SOL because you kind of cost yourself the home games that are supposed to be more winnable early in the season. So that kind of puts you behind the 8 ball. So now you have to face these challenges head on and say, hey, when we play the Panthers on the road, we got to pick up a win. When we play the Bills on the road, when we play the Colts on the road, when we play the Panthers or the Falcons on the road, we got to pick up those wins. When you play the Dolphins last game of the season, hey, I don't need to, I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but that could be, for the playoffs. Like if you win that game, you could, that could be a win or go home kind of situation and defining, season defining game. So I definitely think that the Patriots are headed in the right direction. Back to championship contender? No. Back to the playoffs? I'll even, probably say no for now on that. But back to being competitive and back to being able to, really compete with the team that a lot of people think are really good. Like that's a good sign. So you got to take that. Nick's Rage saying, nice win on the road. Hate to think Pats could easily have been 6-2 though. And I guess that's kind of the points we just touched on. Or, they had really, I mean, you say 6-2, you could honestly say 7-1 if you wanted to. I mean, I'd let you get away with it. There were 3 of those games in there, which were, field goal games at the end of regulation. Whether it was, you want to talk about the Cowboys game, which went to overtime, the game you lost against the Buccaneers when Nick Folk missed the field goal, the Damian Harris fumble against the Dolphins. Like, you'll look back on those 3 and say, I wish we could have won one of those. And, I will say that all those games, I would say pretty much at least the Buccaneers and the Cowboys, like those 2 teams are better than you. So it's hard to say you should have won those games, but it's not hard to say you have to win those games if you're a playoff team. You have to steal games, especially at home against better teams. And they unfortunately didn't do that. So, I don't want to harp on those losses too much. We're still feeling good after the win, but you're right. The Patriots could be better right now. And that's unfortunate. I understand this was technically a 3-point game, so it's technically a 1-possession game, but you were up 10 in the fourth quarter and you let the Chargers drive the field on you and get the touchdown. So I don't really want to give the Patriots credit for a close win against a good team here. I understand that the score will say that, but to me, you weren't in a position where either you needed to drive the field for a game-winning score or you needed to stop the Chargers from doing that in this game. You were never in that position. So I'm not going to really give them full credit on that close, gritty win, that whole thing. I think I would have liked to see that in one of those other games. Be competitive. Can you come through in the clutch? All that stuff. The only thing they did in the clutch in this game was they were good at running out the clock. You give them credit there. The clock management was really good, and they recovered the onside kick. And that was really the only notable stuff they did down the stretch of that game. As far as when it was important, clutch time, you got to make this, you got to do this if you want to win the game. So I'm not going to give him full credit on that. I give him credit for beating the Chargers, sure, and beating them handily, great, awesome. I think that obviously that's better. You'd rather have a win where you're not, sweating it out than a game where you are. But if we're talking about like the mental side of things, that factor of like mental toughness and all that kind of stuff, and can you win close? And what do you do? What do you do? Like what kind of mental, what kind of mindset you have when you're in those spots? Like, yeah, I think that those other games are better proof of that, and they haven't come through in those spots so far. So to me, the next 3 games, they shouldn't find themselves in those spots. Maybe they will. I'm sure they will once or twice. I mean, these teams aren't bad. They're all pretty good teams. I mean, 2 out of the 3 of them lost today though. So they're mostly, I'd say good. They're kind of mediocre. I think they're all around 500 right now. I think the only team that isn't is maybe the Falcons. I think the Falcons are under 500, but the Browns fell to 4-4. They're under 500. The Panthers, I think, climbed back to 4-4, and the Falcons are 3-4. So, I mean, and hey, you're 500 right now. So you're pretty much facing teams that should be about on your level. So, hey, you couldn't steal the ones against teams that are better. The Bucks are 6-1, and the Cowboys are 5-1, and who knows what they'll do tonight with a backup quarterback. But you couldn't beat the one-loss teams. I get that. They're better. Beat the teams that are on your level. If it's kind of a situation where it's like they beat up on the teams that are below them in the the Jets and the Texans. They couldn't quite get over the top against teams that are better than them. So what do you do against the teams that are right there? Pick on someone your own size. Like these are teams that are your own size. So I think they'll be certainly like fun matchups. Maybe they'll be a little competitive. I know 610 Football. You guys can go check out 610 Football, posting some good football content over there every week. But saying Mickey Mouse win, $10 donation for a Mickey Mouse win. Hey, I'll take the $10 donation. But I mean, Mickey Mouse win. You want to talk about? I know 610 Football over there. He's a Philadelphia fan. Beat the Lions. He beat the Lions, and he's talking about Mickey Mouse wins. So I don't know how an Eagles fan is going to be talking about that today after the team they just played, especially because, I don't know, what are you talking about? They played the Chargers. I mean, that's a pretty good team. I think by all means, a lot better than the Lions so far this year. And, I personally, if you want to talk about like the Patriots winning, cheap or, not even cheap, but I don't know what the word would be, like they shouldn't have won this game because of officials or something wonky happening. Like, for if you want to point to some of that stuff, like I mean, I think that the Patriots, like there was really none of that. Penalties kind of went against them in this game, and rightfully so. But they had a few big penalties that set them back, and Justin Herbert just wasn't good enough today, and that's kind of what it came down to for LA. So I give the Patriots full credit for this win. I just I don't give them full credit for the close grinded out win that the score would suggest. 610 Football saying Eagles should have lost. Maybe not to another team, maybe, but not the Lions. Patrick saying no Gronk on defense in Miami, of course, referring to the fact that that game the Patriots needed to win in Miami way back when, where they had the, I don't know if you want to call it the Hail Mary, but the hook and ladder play at the end where Gronk missed the tackle and everything like that. So that's not going to happen this year because Gronk's not going to be out there on defense, sure, but who knows? It could be, that certainly could be a game that decides your season. Hopefully it's not Hunter Henry out there on defense that the Patriots have to worry about this time around. Mr. Irrelevant looks like a little unhappy. What are you even talking about? The officials killed the pass this game. And, again, Mr. Irrelevant kind of pointed that out myself, like that their penalties definitely went against the Patriots. Were they unfair calls? I don't know. I will say there was a big penalty on the Chargers early on that people pointed out and said that probably shouldn't have been a penalty. I think it was on the Patriots touchdown drive where they got called for the unnecessary roughness against Mac Jones for the kind of late hit. Mac Jones kind of ran for the first down, and I say, or maybe was this holding? I don't even remember at this point, but there was kind of a late shot on Mac Jones, and the Patriots got 15 yards out of it. Yeah, it was the play that they it was the drive that they ended up turning it over on downs anyway. So it didn't ultimately result in anything for the Patriots. But if it did, that was something we could go back and look at and say, hey, you got the benefit of that call, but it didn't end in points. So it's really didn't make much of a difference at all in the game. It was let's see, 3rd and 4. Mac Jones scrambles for 6 yards, so they would have got the first down anyway. So it's not like it even gave them that. Just gave them an extra 15 yards after the unnecessary roughness. So that was a weird one. Certainly, if things had gone differently, maybe a play we point out. But again, you turn over and downs anyway. Chargers got the ball back. Like, it wasn't really that big of a deal. I thought this is more of an aside, but I did think the play where Bill Belichick challenged that it should have been a safety against Justin Herbert, I felt like a lot of people didn't really understand what was going on. As my phone falls a little bit, I think a lot of people didn't really understand what was going on that play. I think that the reason that Bill Belichick challenged that, people said, "Oh, that the hold doesn't happen in the end zone." That the Patriots or the Chargers offensive lineman isn't in the end zone when he holds. Like, why Bill Belichick even challenge this? That was stupid. The whole idea is that the quarterback is in the end zone, not the hold necessarily. So if Herbert was deemed in the end zone on that play, the Patriots would have got the safety. The only problem is he was kind of on the end line there, on the end zone line, so it was close. And I don't know if I think they said even the call on the field stands. They didn't even say it was confirmed. So that means that they couldn't really tell if Herbert was technically in the end zone when the hold happened because it was so close. He was just barely walking on that little goal line right there. So that was an interesting one too. Who knows? If that had gone the Patriots' way, maybe some people would have been upset about it. But again, it didn't. So there weren't a lot of those things in this game for the Patriots. And 6 Football saying, just joking around a little bit. And then Mr. Irrelevant saying, all good. Pats versus Eagles is the greatest Super Bowl ever. If the Pats, or it's the greatest Super Bowl ever, even if the Pats lost, it was a wild game. And saying, I'll go to my grave saying Brady outplayed Foles. And we don't, guys. I don't want to, we don't need to relive this game. I think a lot of people watching this do not want to go back and rehash what happened that night. It's not very fond memories, but by all means, go back and forth and chat with it. I might not bring it up too much. But another big thing in this game, obviously the Chargers coming down the field and or the Patriots the drive. And I said it before, and I'll say it again, that the 2-point conversion they got and Jacoby Myers getting in the end zone, like, I think a lot of people kind of found that a little bit funny because Myers, people made the big deal like that he had never scored a touchdown in his career, so he finds the end zone on the 2-point conversion. Not quite the touchdown he wanted, but he got in the end zone for a score. So the first time he's done that, at least. That wasn't a pass. So you give Myers some credit for making that play, but again, still looking for that elusive touchdown. It was a little weird when they went for it on that 4th down, and they, Mac Jones kind of seemed like he was just throwing it away on the fade route to Jacoby Myers. It wasn't really that accurate, so that was certainly an interesting one to go back and look at as well. But one of the big 2 other receivers I want to highlight for the Patriots real quick. I'll start with Nelson Agholor, because Nelson Agholor in this game, like, this was probably his best game as a Patriot. I mean, he made a couple of big catches down the field, did a nice job when it came time to run the clock of staying in bounds and everything like that. He only had 3 catches for about 60 yards, but that's his second most he's had as a Patriot. The first game against the Dolphins, maybe a little better for him, 5 for 72 and a touchdown. So I'll give you that one. That was week 1, obviously, in the loss. But as far as, actually coming up with the win, him playing a big factor, having that 44-yard catch, Mac Jones' longest completion of the season. So Nelson Agholor, as we're talking about the Eagles a little bit, former Eagle, he was really nice today. And I think that's something that as we get to the trade deadline, like, it was kind of a question, should the Patriots target a receiver? Should it be, the Danny Amendola or even Brandon Cooks, people talking about, and all this stuff. Like, but, if Nelson Agholor starts playing a little better, then they won't have to. And that big play today, like his whole bread and butter with the Raiders were those big pass plays down the field, stretching the field. And it was great to see that early in this Chargers game and him making an impact there. So if he can continue to play well, you won't need to go out there and look for a receiver trade. Like, I think if you have the 2 tight ends who, again, both need to continue to step up, you have Nelson Agholor, Bourne, and Jacoby Myers, like, that might just be good enough. It might just be good enough if all of those guys can hit their ceiling. Like, if all of those guys play as well as they can possibly play, you have yourself a good enough receiving core, to win with at least. And the other guy who might be interesting as we approach the trade deadline for different reasons is N'Keal Harry, who today had, a couple of nice catches, nothing to, write home about. Certainly not like his best game ever by any means or anything like that, anything close. But N'Keal Harry with 2 catches for 30 yards, had one nice one over the middle on Asante Samuel Jr., another nice comeback right on the sideline. So N'Keal Harry, a little bit of a sighting. I know that he hasn't had a great season. That might have been the only, I hate to say his season high for catches, but I think it was that or close to that. I can't remember a game where he had more than 2. So, N'Keal Harry, he had started to come along last season. He had, a nice little rapport with Cam Newton, but just hadn't done anything so far this season. So he gets out there, gets his chance, gets 2 receptions, which, he only had 3 coming into the game on the season. So a nice little game for N'Keal Harry. I don't think it means much for the Patriots, but I don't know. Can you get a 7th for him now? Like, I don't know. I just wonder, why was N'Keal Harry out there more than he was in previous weeks? The Patriots, like, let's just throw him out there and maybe like in just certain spots and see if like some team comes along and wants to deal him. But I think it's notable. It's interesting. We heard that he wanted out before the season, and that talk kind of died down. His agent had that whole weird letter saying he's this, great receiver, great deep threat, whatever. And it's just terrible that he's been with the Patriots and they haven't used him correctly or whatever you want to say. And yet, N'Keal Harry, hasn't been traded yet. And we've heard, radio silence on that front. So I wonder, are we going to see a situation play out where the Patriots kind of just take whatever? Maybe it's a conditional 7th rounder. Like, I don't know. I find it hard to believe they're going to get anything for him at this point. So maybe it's just a matter of we're getting him involved a little bit, and that's pretty much all there is to it. But at least worth noting that he was out there. He was out there and he made a couple catches. One was key. I think the one on Asante Samuel was 3rd down. The other one I think was later in the 4th quarter as the Patriots were kind of driving and running the clock down. So a couple important plays for N'Keal Harry and a couple that were kind of difference makers in the game, at least a little bit. So give credit to Harry for, at the very least, making a couple big catches that I don't maybe boost his value just a little bit. I don't want to go too far with it, but maybe that helps you find a trade partner for him. I don't know if there's any team out there that would even take a sniff at him at this point. Like no one's receiving core is bad enough that they're going to need that. But I mean, we've seen things play out in the past. Like if you look at some of the trades the Patriots have made in years past, like it's not, I guess, totally out of the realm to see a receiver get traded for, next to nothing that isn't even like that good of a receiver. So for instance, like last year, Isaiah Ford, the Patriots traded for Isaiah Ford from the Dolphins for like a conditional 6th round pick. And Isaiah Ford, like that season, he wasn't doing too great. Like, he was a 4th, 5th string receiver for Miami, only had like 28 catches, I think, or something like that. And, even still, Miami got a conditional 6th rounder for him. So, I think that if a team just says, hey, let's kick the tires. Hey, our receiving core is a little weak. Let's just see what N'Keal Harry can do. Like, maybe a team will pony up a conditional 6th or conditional 7th. It's, again, I think we see some of these trades where like big name players go for very little. And we think, well, who's going to, like Stephon Gilmore, for instance, going for, the 5th round pick or 4th round pick, whatever he went for. And people saying, you only got that for Stephon Gilmore. Like, how are you going to get anything for N'Keal Harry? Teams make these trades. The NFL trades are weird. So I wouldn't rule out, is that big a difference between Isaiah Ford and N'Keal Harry? Like, not really. If you want to say Isaiah Ford is better, fine. N'Keal Harry definitely has higher potential. Just probably never going to reach it. But, that aside, I think that teams, the teams do these moves all the time. So I wouldn't rule it out. And who knows? Maybe that's why the Patriots rolled them out there this week. I have, let's see, Mr. Irrelevant saying, Chargers have the worst run defense in the league. Another big point coming into the game. And we passed twice on the 1-yard line. Did Bill Belichick forget about Malcolm Butler? Sort of a good point there. Yeah, I think even they noted on the broadcast, like when it was 3rd down, this should be 4-down territory for the Patriots, and they should just run it right down the Chargers' throat. And I think there's a lot of that in the NFL as far as like trying to outsmart a team, trying to do what they aren't expecting. If they're expecting you to run, you should throw it. You see a lot of that in the NFL. And sometimes it doesn't work out. Sometimes it does, whatever. So I think that like the way Damian Harris was playing, should you have given it to him on those 2 possessions? Sure, I think so. Why not? But teams mix it up with this type of stuff all the time. So I'm not going to totally like rake them over the coals for that one. But if they lost, maybe I would. Maybe I'd be more on your side. Maybe I'd be saying, how do you not give it to Damian Harris there? And Damian Harris, by the way, he had a pretty good day, but not the day I think people were expecting him to have going against that terrible run defense. And he had those big runs that were kind of taken off the board. You could see he was frustrated after that happened. But 3.5 yards of carry for him, 3.2 for Ramondre Stevenson. So they didn't really take advantage of that much. That poor Chargers rushing defense, and they threw it 35 times with Mac Jones, which is kind of a lot. Again, like you said, when you're going against a defense that struggled as much as they have against the run, and when you're a team in their own right, that the Patriots that usually is a pretty run-focused team and a team that you might consider that the strength of their offense. So it's odd that Mac Jones would throw 35 times, which is kind of high for him. I mean, obviously his 51 against New Orleans is an outlier, but it's on the higher end, more than he threw the first game against the Jets or Houston and Dallas. So it's right in the middle there, along with the rest of his performances. But I guess you could say a little odd, considering the circumstances. Also saying Mac Jones' longest pass was a 70-yard touchdown against the Cowboys. You're right, Mr. Irrelevant. I think that is weird. I think that you know what it was, Mr. Irrelevant? I think that what the reason I said that was because it's Mac Jones' longest pass in terms of air yardage. So how far the ball traveled in the air as opposed to how long the actual pass was. Because there was a nice little catch and run on that Kendrick Bourne play. He took that to the house. So I think I saw Mike Reese tweet it out during the game. Mike Reese is the one who had the stat that it was his longest pass in terms of how far the ball actually traveled in terms of air yardage. So that's what it was. It wasn't his longest pass of the season. It was his longest, air yardage pass of the season. And saying nice game from Judon and Barrymore, got his first career sack. Yeah, and also forced that holding penalty that was almost a safety. Bill Belichick was hoping it was a safety, but they kind of had to double team him there, and he broke through, and he, or didn't quite break through because they were holding him. But he created problems for the Chargers today, for sure. And we mentioned like their secondary and feeling good about what they did today, but, was it totally on them or was it the defensive line? And I think you give more credit to the defensive line. They can be great. The secondary doesn't have to be as good. So if you have Judon and you have Barrymore and you have Lawrence Guy playing well and, whoever else you want to put out there among your other edge rushers, whether you have Kyle Van Noy out there, or you want to run with Ronnie Perkins when he's healthy, or if you eventually have Chase Winovich come off IR or whatever, who's been in and out of the lineup oddly. But whoever it ends up being, like if that defensive line can be really good, then your bad secondary or your mediocre secondary, you don't have to worry about it as much. And I think they got a lot of help from those guys today. And I think, a big reason why Adrian Phillips had a big game as he did, like them, forcing Justin Herbert into, rushing those throws a little bit. And they definitely, just defensively, they confused the Chargers. That was very clear out there. And saying thanks for the clear up. Schedule doesn't look too bad coming up. And yeah, we talk about the schedule all the time on this show, I feel like, but it's big. So next time out against the Panthers, I was saying this during the game. I hate the fact that the NFL schedule makers didn't put Sam Darnold on Halloween. The Seeing Ghosts and Sam Darnold and the Patriots. Like, how do you not have that game on Halloween with Darnold and the Patriots? Like, that would have been so good. And I know that people would have had a field day with that. Like, I hate that the NFL just scheduled it 1 week later. It's just like, that would have been so juicy, so good to have that game rest where it could have. But they robbed us of it. And of course, and it's so weird too, because even if it was the Jets or Sam Darnold, you would have had fun with those storylines. And they scheduled the Jets a week before Halloween and the Panthers a week after. Like, are you kidding me? Are we not supposed to seem like something's up there? Are you trying to avoid putting either of those teams on Halloween because you got in trouble when you put Sam Darnold's seeing ghost comment on the air in the first place? Like, that would have been so good. So good. Edward's saying they should win 3 of the next 4. So 3 of the, to me, this is the way I break up their schedule. It was kind of the whole, there was a clear cutoff point after the Jets game where you play 4 teams that are kind of mediocre to good. And I put the Chargers in that mediocre category. They've had a good year, but they haven't exactly, to me, proven to be this elite team yet. And some people thought so. I didn't think so just yet. Some people had them as Super Bowl contenders. I wasn't ready to go that far yet. So they're 4-3. They're right around 500 now. I think that's what the Chargers are. So now I group them in with the Panthers, who are 500, the Browns, who are 500, and the Falcons, who are 1 game under 500. So to me, that is a chunk of your schedule where you play teams that are kind of on your level. You need to take care of business there. Then you get into the next 4-game stretch for them. Because so I chunk it up. This is a 4-game chunk. Then we have the next 4-game chunk. In that chunk, you have 3 really good teams and 1 kind of mediocre to okay team. But that is the toughest part of your schedule. You have the Bills twice. You have the Titans, and you have the Colts. So you group the Titans in with those next 4 games. I can't go that far because the Titans to me are really good. One of the best teams in the NFL. Going to compete for a bye in the AFC likely at this point. I mean, especially with some of the losses we saw across the league. Right now, it's the Bills at 5-2, the Raiders at 5-2, the Ravens at 5-2, and the Titans are 6-2. So they right now are the number 1 seed, and they are looking pretty scary. So I'm not very excited about the proposition of playing the Titans, and I don't think they should be grouped in with that next part of your schedule. If you're talking about 3-1 over the next 4, like you're potentially talking about stealing one against the Titans. To me, if you're looking at the next 4 and you're saying, well, we can afford 1 loss in there, the Titans game is it. So I don't like to group those together. I'm saying, these 4, give me 3-1 in that, and then at least give me 2-2 over those next 4 games. So that should get you to about 8 wins. And then after that, you need to be able to win your last 2 because that's the last chunk. I want this 4 games chunk go 3-1. Okay, that gets you to 6-5. Okay, then give me 2-2. That gets you to 8-7, and then the last 2 are the Jaguars. That should be an easy win, and the Dolphins. You have to at least split against the Dolphins. That you lost earlier this year. So that was your loss. And we thought the Dolphins were pretty good at that time because they were a 10-win team last year. Turns out they're not. If you don't at least get 1 against that Dolphins team this year, you don't deserve to make the playoffs. So 3-1 in this 4-game chunk that we're in the midst of now. 2-2 against the Bills twice, the Titans, and the Colts. I think that's very generous. You should beat the Colts. You got to beat the Colts if you're going to make the playoffs. And then just give me 1. Just 1. That's not even asking that much. Just give me 1 win against the Bills twice. You get 2 shots at it. Or the Titans. Just 1 of those. And then those last 2 games, just clean up against teams you're better than. You are clearly better than the Dolphins right now. You're clearly better than the Jaguars. So that gets you to 10 wins. Does 10 wins get you to the playoffs? I don't know. It's impossible to know the answer to that. But it could. It doesn't look impossible right now. There's 3 wild cards. And I think right now, if I'm looking on the top of my head, like trying to figure this out, the Bengals are 1, the Chargers are 1, and the Steelers are 1. And now you have the tiebreaker over the Chargers, which could be huge, could be massive for them, okay? So you're a half game out now of a wild card in the AFC. So, 10-7 could easily get you in. I mean, the way it looks right now, it looks like it'll get you in. But you need to do what I just said you need to do again on that schedule. Take one against the Bills, and Titans. Those 3 games. Take one of those. Clean up business the last 2, and over these next 3, you can drop one. I say 3-0. You can afford to slip up. If you slip up against the Browns, okay. Browns are a pretty good team too. I say the Browns. Maybe that's not the one you want to slip up in, because that could be another team that you'd like the tiebreaker against. But so hopefully you can win that game. But if you slip up in again, against the Falcons and the Panthers, okay, the Falcons are a good offense and Panthers are a good defense. So maybe it just doesn't go your way one of those days. But you really, really cannot afford to lose any of those last 2. So that's the map right now. Does it seem impossible? It shouldn't. They're right in the mix, half game out of the wild card. So that is what should be exciting. It's not that the Patriots beat the Chargers, not that they're back. It's not that they're this dominant team again. It's not that this is totally, a game that you should feel incredible about, that you should feel like, oh, what an incredible win. It's that you're in the mix now. You're in those teams in the hunt. You're near the top of those teams in the hunt. You might be, I think the Patriots actually might be the first team in the hunt in the AFC. If you go on that little playoff picture standing, which I don't even know if it's even up right now. It's so early in the season. I guess we're already at the near halfway mark with 8 games played. In previous seasons, it would have been the exact halfway mark, but tomato. But the Broncos are 4-4. The Browns are 4-4. So you're tied with those teams. But any team that's not in the actual playoff picture right now, you are right there with. You're in that mix. You have the best record of teams that aren't in the playoff picture. So hey, they're doing things right. And I'll change. I guess I'll change my tune on it. It's because it's not needed, but at least beat the Browns. Win 2 of the next 3 and definitely make sure the Browns are one of those, and you'll be in a great spot. You will be in a really, really good spot, because then you can afford to drop 2 of those next 4, and you don't need to beat you don't even need to beat the Bills. You can go 0-2 against the Bills this year, and if you're able to beat the Titans and the Colts, you're good. You should go. You should go into those final 2 games. If you can win those, clean up against bad teams, then you should make the playoffs. And that's what's staring the Patriots down right now. So, and the Browns one's important for a potential tiebreaker later in the season, but and not just a tiebreaker, but beating a team that's also in the hunt with you right now. So that's what you're looking at, and that's really really key. Mr. Irrelevant saying would have been the biggest troll job by the schedule makers if they put the Sam Darnold on Halloween or the Jets or whatever it was. It should have been Sam Darnold, but yeah, would have been great. All right, guys, that's going to do it for this episode of the Postgame Show. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to come back next week when we're talking about ghosts. Happy Halloween, everybody. I know the next week when they play Sam Darnold, hopefully we're talking about a few more interceptions by J.C. Jackson. I already predicted it. J.C. Jackson is going to have a pick in this game. He's picked off only the Jets this year, 3 picks against the Jets. Sam Darnold's still a Jet at heart, so he'll get an interception in that game. Mark it right here. Check out the Celtics Power Hour, which we will be, I think we'll have that on Tuesday, I believe, and I should be doing something a little fun at the beginning of that stream. Don't want to reveal it, but if some of you guys have been watching those shows, you know what it is. So that should be happening on Tuesday. But thank you guys for joining. Really appreciate it. Thanks once again to 610 Football for the super chat, even if it was with a little bit of a mean comment. But don't worry, guys. He said he was just joking around. So go over and check out 610 Football's content. And thank you guys so much. We'll see you next time, hopefully, when the Patriots are